before a program is designed, you know, everything, well, let's say quite a significant portion of anything DFID done is predicated on preliminary analysis. You see, so it's
independent of what government is saying?
It's independent of all governments because you have independent program designers, both locally and internationally sourced. And what they do is to go to the field, they look at the critical problem. If it's a problem in health, if it's a problem in growth, if it's a problem in education, they look at the problem. And they do the analysis, they get the facts, they get the data. And the data will determine what kind of intervention
to put in
so
place.
it is, you collect the data, then you determine the intervention, and you focus on what results you expect from that intervention. And you put, but social science is not an exact science, and dealing with human beings is not exact. And of course, no matter how brilliant a foreign expert is, right? You cannot compare total indigenous knowledge. You see, unfortunately, we have not yet, and that is one of the major deficiencies I find in Nigeria amongst us. We don't collect data, we don't do analysis, we don't collect statistics, and we don't keep records. How do you make decisions without data, without analysis, without records?
I'm still going to come back to that anyway. Now, you have been supporting the Nigerian Governors Forum in some of their programs. You know, and there's one thing they call peer review mechanism, which is the PRM.
Yes.
Now, my take is that many NGOs, many CBOs, many of these local interest groups, advocacy groups and all that, are not really part of that review mechanism, because I think it's just the governors gather, some collection, a club of senior schoolboys, and then they get the FID to look at what they're doing, get ready to get it rubber stamped, and it's like, oh, look, we have compared us. Why can't the review be done? Not necessarily nationally, but probably continentally. You can look, like you said, there are some issues that are globally almost the same thing. So look at the situation in maybe southwest Nigeria, compare it with the situation somewhere in the Ghana or somewhere in the Turkey or somewhere, you know, and say, okay, look, yes.
Well, you know, even that support and the peer review mechanism thing has some history. Okay. There's a history to it.
Okay.
You will recall the African peer review mechanism under the NEPAD, which basically is subjecting oneself to some checks. You will also recall the seeds benchmarking that was done, you know, on a state-by-state basis. That the seeds benchmarking largely did not succeed. It failed because states felt that it was a way that you would downgrade. It was more competitive. It was more of, and the competition was rather, was perceived to be malignant, if I may use that word.
Yeah.
But this now, it is that states volunteer themselves to be peer reviewed. Anambra has done it. Ekiti has done it. And we see that the states that have put themselves up to be peer reviewed, they've subjected themselves to civil society. I was at the launching of the Ekiti State Peer Review. And what happened was that, you know, the consultants did their bit, but civil society was also a part of evaluating and looking at what was going on. So this particular mechanism is number one, it's less contentious, because it is based on the voluntary or the willingness of a government to put itself out and say, okay, let's see what I'm doing. You know, and so we've had, I'm not sure whether up to 1/3 of the states have submitted themselves to it, but everybody's open to share the information. Well, that is, as you would say, is a petrodollar question, $1 million question. The expectation of an oil-rich country is that you have resources, not only human resources, but additionally financial resources. And the expectation is that the majority of your people, if not rich, at least shouldn't be poor. There will always be poor people, but they should be in the minority, and there should be sufficient safety nets because you have resources. It's also expected that you would use your resource to deliver on infrastructure, which is the bedrock of development. Now, if you look at Nigeria's infrastructure deficit with Nigeria's poverty levels, the question you want to ask against the backdrop of Nigeria's humongous oil resources, then you ask the question, what is happening? There is a disconnect.
Yes.
You can't relate the oil earnings with the infrastructure deficit and the humongous poverty. And I want to attribute it to certain things. There are plenty of leakages in the system.
Leakages
of the resources. Okay. Whether malicious or accidental or by carelessness, there is plenty of leakages in the Nigerian financial system.
So how are we going to plug, number one, the leakages? How do we begin to redirect, or how do we begin to even address where the leakages are?
In the first place, we don't deny that there are leakages. You first get out of the mental contraption of denying there are leakages. The corruption rate is rather significant, and we must deal with corruption. Then poverty is a self-reinforcing negative. It is easier for a poor man to become poorer than for a rich man to get richer.
Why is that?
So we must deal with, well, because poverty itself is faster breeding than wealth. Poverty breeds at a faster rate than wealth.
Is that literally or just figuratively?
Both literally, figuratively, and whatever way. You know, so we must tackle corruption. We must tackle poverty, because we've said that part of a significant resource that any nation has is the human resource, right? And it is human beings that are poor. They will be physically poor and mentally poor. A poor man is outside. He cannot play a role, or maybe one of the reasons why he's poor is that he's been excluded from the economy.
Yeah.
A poor man does not pay his tax, cannot pay his tax. So basically 80% of Nigerians are not in any position to pay tax, or even to be demanded
to
pay taxes. So they are outside the economic potential of Nigeria. They are outside the economic happenings in Nigeria. So basically we have to look at our public financial management systems, our public accounting records keeping, direct corruption in terms of our investigative capacity, both preventing it, addressing it, and punishing it where it happens. And basically, overarching is the issue of ignorance and education. What people do not know,
they won't ask for.
They wouldn't ask for.
Now,